Okay. At this time, we're going to move to Commissioner Teague, and he to introduce our next speaker, please.
Thank you, Commissioner McMillan. At this time, I'd like to recognize Dan Gibbs, Wildlife Manager 3 from Region 4.
I'd like to thank the Commission for the opportunity to speak to you today. And I was thinking it's kind of nice to be talking about bears and not talking about something controversial for a change, so it'll be different. Okay, I'm going to speak today about a new education program that we've been working on for a little over a year now, I guess, and it's obviously about black bears, and I'm just going to jump right into this. Just a little bit of background information. Black bear numbers are increasing. That's no surprise to anyone in this room, I don't believe, but between 88 and 2000, we had an increase of 500 bears, so we went from about 200 to 2,500, and then over the next 12-year period, it really jumped up another 1,500, where our estimation is now at about 4,000 bears. This number is a little bit misleading because it does not include what would be in the National Park, Smoky Mountains National Park, nor does it include figures on the plateau. This is just based on reconstructed bear population data, so basically data that we're getting from our harvested bears. So this is going to be a minimum population estimate at the very least. Bear numbers are increasing, as you've seen, so sightings are increasing. This picture is taken last summer on the Strip in Knoxville. Bear sightings in Knoxville, Johnson City, even here in Kingsport are on the rise. A lot of bear sightings here in the Colonial Heights area of Kingsport, coming off Bays Mountain and off Host and Ammunition plant. So bears are doing quite well, and it's really no surprise when you look at the map that we have here. And this map is a little bit misleading because it's presented as a bear habitat map, and really what it should be presented as a bear preferred habitat map, I guess, because basically it's looking at areas of high elevation, a lot of forest, and low human populations, and that's what we have here at Cherokee National Forest. But make no mistake, all of Tennessee is usable space for black bears, and the line doesn't stop here. It goes all the way to Region 1 in Memphis. So, but here's our traditional range, Smoky Mountains National Park here, and as you can see, when you're looking at the orange and yellow, we have a lot more really good quality habitat over here than what we have here. Now, obviously, you've got North Carolina coming in and creating a lot more, but a lot going on with bears. I will mention this area right here, Scott and Fentress County, and a little bit of Pickett, Big South Fork National Recreation Area. We've talked about that in the past, and that is definitely our core area of expansion on the plateau, and bears are moving out. So, in short, we can expect bears over the short term and the long term to start moving into these areas and setting up house. But as we have mass shortages, spring dispersal, things like that, bears are going to start coming down into the valleys and the low areas and the areas that are more inhabited by people. And speaking of people, I need to show you this slide because you can see right now our population in Tennessee is about 6.4 million people. But the projections over the next 30 years is going to get us at 7.4 million people, an increase of about 18%. So obviously, all these people are going to need somewhere to live, and a lot of people like to live in the mountains with the bears. So as you can imagine, we start seeing a lot of things like this. This is an article that was in the paper last year in Crossville. I was driving through and saw this and picked it up, and bear sighting in Fairfield Glade. And we had a meeting about a month ago, and it's the first time I've spent any time in Fairfield Glade, and I can obviously see why that's a severe or a big issue for Region 3 and bear activity in the Fairfield-Glade area, which is just going to be right up against good bear habitat. So seeing more and more of this, bears are very attractive to the media. Anything that comes around, the media wants to talk to us about it. That has its advantages and disadvantages, and hopefully through this program we can use it to our advantage. As you might expect, as bear population numbers go up, so do complaints. Your complaints are going to vary from year to year depending on your mast availability, how good of a crop of cubs you had the previous year, dispersal and things like that. But we've got several wildlife officers in the room today, some from here in the Tri-Cities, a couple from Blount County, and they can tell you stories all day long about dealing with these nuisance complaints in their day-to-day job, and it's obviously taking up more and more of their time on an annual basis. Some of the complaints, they'll vary from bears in trash cans to crop depredation, property damage, simply bears in birdseed. Here we have a campsite that was not left in very good shape, and a lot of attractants left in the fire ring there. And then supplemental feeding, whether it be deer or turkey or bears, the supplemental feeding will attract bears and cause a lot of issues, especially when the food goes away. So all these issues, and I wanted to make the point that most of these situations, the people that are providing the food aren't doing it intentionally. They're just not educated. And a lot of times when you talk to the people, they will make changes. And that's good because we know people want to do the right thing for bears. In this survey that we conducted in 2012, that kind of backs that up as well. And I'm not going to spend much time at all on this because you guys have already seen this. But just in quick review, there's a lot of support for bears by the residents of Tennessee and protection of their habitat. And there's a lot of support for regulations that require people to do the proper things in areas that bears frequent. And in addition, there's a lot of knowledge out there that people realize that feeding wildlife is not a good thing. And there's not a lot of support for feeding bears or any other wildlife for that matter, other than birds, obviously. So I showed you this just a second ago. We understand we're going to get complaints. We're going to have issues. That's a no-brainer, but what we'd rather see is a line that looks something more like that. And the question is, how do you get to that line? And obviously the first thing that comes up is education. I can't tell you how many meetings we've had in our agency over the years to talk about how do you get the message out to the public. And we've done a lot of things, but typically they just seem to fall a little bit short. So the question is why? And I didn't mention it, but this increase in bear numbers is not just in Tennessee, it's all over the eastern U.S. A paper in the Journal of Wildlife Management recently documented about 18% increase in black bears nationwide. So Tennessee is not the only state that is dealing with this issue, and I'll mention more about that here in a few minutes. But in March of 2012, there was a workshop that was dedicated strictly to human-bear conflicts, and it was held out in the West where those agencies have been dealing with it a lot longer than we have. But a lot of good papers, and they started to shed a little bit of light on some of these issues as to why maybe some of our efforts haven't been successful. And one of the papers that was presented was talking about, for people, when it comes to wildlife, perception is reality. And you have to think about that for a minute, but most people's perception regarding bears is not reality. They see them as a cute little cub or a big cuddly bear looking for an easy meal, or maybe even as a circus act. But the reality is that bears can cause a great deal of damage, and they can become a serious public safety issue and cause us a lot of problems. And here we have a picture of a bear a sow, teaching her 3 cubs some very, very bad habits. And I think either one of our officers in Blount County could probably tell you multiple stories of this exact situation occurring in their area. It happens all the time. And eventually somebody had to deal with this situation. And nothing talks about people's false perceptions on bears better than this picture right here. And you see you have this guy crawling across the ground, and just in case you weren't sure, that is a bear right there. And you know, I have to ask the question, if the bear's got his head down feeding by a trash can, out of the corner of his eye he sees something crawling towards him, and my guess is he could very easily consider that as a threat. And this guy's put himself in some severe danger, and this did occur just next county over from here. So this is going on in East Tennessee and in this area. So Daryl mentioned yesterday hunters having realistic expectations. We also need people to have realistic perceptions. So that's important. The second thing that was talked about at this meeting was the fact that it takes a minimum of 5 years to effectively ingrain a message to the public. And in addition to that, a advertisement or something, an ad, whatever it may be, needs to be viewed at least 6 times by the general public before it's going to be remembered. So longevity and repetition is a very important part of an education program. So with all that in mind, we decided we wanted to try something different, and Director Carter gave us the go-ahead to try to look at something more on a statewide level, more proactive. And our goal was to develop a long-term, comprehensive black bear education program that will cause the public to have realistic perceptions regarding bears, understand their role in bear management, which is vital, and then to take this information and take action and be proactive to avoid bear conflicts. Bear Wise is the name of the program that we're introducing. Excuse me. And I'll use the analogy of a 3-legged stool to describe what we're going to do. We're going to be 3 major parts, and they all have a significant role in the success of this program. The first is going to be to market a logo or a brand, if you will. Secondly is to use multiple forms of message dispersal. And thirdly, to rely on cooperative efforts. And I'm going to talk about each of these briefly here. This is our brand, or our logo. And if you talk about branding to someone that's in the business world, they'll quickly know what you're talking about. But to the general public, they may envision something more like this: cowboys with a fire and a hot iron. And what is the purpose of these guys here? Their purpose is to place a unique mark that identifies ownership. And in the business world, branding is used daily. We're bombarded with brands. I think everybody here would recognize all of these. And even the natural resources world uses branding extensively. And nothing has been more successful than Smokey the Bear as far as a brand. And 95% of U.S. adults recognize Smokey the Bear and his message, so that's pretty impressive. So if you look for a definition of branding, there are a lot out there, but in its simplest terms, it's a consistent image that brings awareness to a program, and that's what we're trying to do with our brand. We want to attack this need of repetition. We want people to start seeing this and associating it with wise and good behavior towards bears and to avoid conflicts. We're going to put it on bear-proof trash cans, recycling bins, dumpsters, wherever they may be. Literature, any kind of literature that's good for bears. Giveaway items. We've got stickers. We've had some bracelets that we've given out at fairs to kids. They're real popular, but anything to start getting the message out to people. And once again, this is just one of the 3 things that we're working on as a package. The second aspect is the message dispersal. And I really enjoyed Michael's presentation yesterday on the new app, and I was sitting there thinking, you know, how can we use this in some of the programs that I'm responsible for? But, you know, this new media that we have, the new technology, is obviously going to be the groundwork for getting our information out. We're going to still use some of the old tried and true things, such as paper flyers and use the press on some interviews and things like that. But obviously the media or the message is going to have to come through our more technology-driven society that we have. So the first thing we're working on is a website. In this website, our goal, one of the things I want to make sure I mention is we're also looking for consistent messaging. The same message is coming out no matter who it's coming from, and that's a big challenge for us. But we're hoping that our website will serve as the base for that consistent messaging, and everybody can come to the website to get the information they want and disseminate it out to the public. So some of the things that we're going to be really focusing on here are the bear-wise basics. And this is typically, you know, don't feed bears, secure your trash, times of years that you shouldn't be feeding birds, things like that. And that's the very first thing that we want people to see, because that's where the bulk of our problems come from. Resources for public service agencies. I won't go into that, but that's a very important aspect. Exclusion techniques, just literature, signage. We'd like to have just basically a group of base signs. And the best example I can use for this, let's say that Johnson City has a city park on Buffalo Mountain, and we have bears on Buffalo Mountain. So let's say that Johnson City Parks and Recreation wants to put some signage up around the park to let their customers and their visitors know about bears. Well, what we'd like for them to do is come to this website, peruse through our signage, pick one or two, add their logo and their phone number, and then have them made and put them up. So we're getting that same consistent message across everywhere, whether it's a state agency, an NGO, a city organization, or even a federal agency. And then basic biological info and educational materials will be available as well. Community involvement is going to be a critical aspect of this program, whether it be through the classroom, neighborhoods, or even businesses. We've got to get the community to buy into this. And if you go to meetings about bears and you talk to biologists from other states, we haven't even begun to deal with some of the things that other states are having to deal with when you're talking to city commissions about taking all their trash cans that are on pickup and converting them over to bear-proof trash cans and things like that. So if we get in on the front end and get the community involved, when those meetings come, and they will come, they'll be a lot easier on us. Here, just an example of why community involvement is so important. This is taken in Johnson City. You got a couple of restaurants, a supermarket. This is Johnson City Medical Center, ETSU is just going to be right over here. You got houses in here and in here and then back in here. And I spent some time in Washington County earlier in my career, and I can tell you from experience that there's people that live and work in this area right here that do not know there's bears on that mountain right there. They have no idea that there are bears there. And we've really got to make them aware of that so they have those realistic perceptions when they do start having bear issues. And they do have bear issues in this area. So community involvement obviously is going to be critical, and we'll need to be working with commissions on the city level to try to get support for our work here. A couple more things we've done. This is a display that we had at the Appalachian Fair this year. Basically, the idea here was to create a porch and put all the things on someone's front porch that would attract bears and just make people start thinking, hey, that looks like my porch. Bird feed, you got dog food. There's no food in here. There's a trash can. You can see a little bit of a grill right here. And didn't get a whole lot of looks last year, but this year we put the bear on here, and man, did it really increase the interest in that display. And that's one of the things that we're really wanting to do with all of our programs, is to evaluate them, make sure they're working, and make changes if we need to get the message out. But I will just say that it was very rewarding for me to work this booth this year, because I stood out here and I watched these people look at this for a little while and talked with them. But they would come up, read the signs, ask a question or two, and then they'd say, well, I think I need to go home and do something a little different. So they were processing the information that we were giving them. They realized that they had a role in avoiding conflict on their property, and then they made a decision to act. And that's the very thing that we had in our ultimate goal of the program. So it does work, and many people are interested. We've talked to a lot of other agencies, and then speaking of agencies that we've talked to, that brings us to our last section here, and that's going to be our cooperative efforts. I really like this slide because it's a good example of teamwork. You can put one person in this boat and ask them to row across the channel or whatever it may be, and they may get there eventually, but they're going to use an extreme amount of energy and effort in doing so. But you put the team in there, and they can get it done in no time at all. And so early on in the project, we really wanted to identify people in Tennessee that had a vested interest in bear management. Even though TWA has the authority of bears, there's a lot of other agencies that have a vested interest in what happens with bears. And the first thing we did was we created a small working group, the Bearwise Working Group, and we're just doing some brainstorming, talking about the website, talking about some different literature, what works, what doesn't work. And we've got state agencies, federal agencies, and non-governmental organizations on there. And here are some of our state and federal agencies that have been involved, and they've all had great input. And we're even starting to see, let me get a hold of this here, this logo, this Bearwise sticker is already showing up on trash cans and on picnic table signage, and even in some literature in several of these areas that are managed by these agencies. So that's very exciting. Incidentally, the picture where the guy's crawling across the ground, that was on TVA property, and in response to that, TVA has now put bear-proof trash cans on that area, and they're very involved in the program. NGOs, the Wildlife Resources Foundation has been involved from the very beginning. Right now, their role has been to help with the development of the website. They've done a very good job, been very, very helpful with that, and we're going to continue to use them in that role. But I also believe that as we move on, that there'll be some other roles that they can play that be very beneficial to the program as well. National Parks Conservation Association. I'd never even heard of this group until we started working on this program, and they read an article in the Knoxville Youth Sentinel about the program and called us and said, hey, we want to get involved. And you see, when I talk about vested interest, well, they've even got bears on their logo. So they bring a lot to the table. They've got unbelievable marketing experience, and the contacts that they have with graphic designers and website developers, and it's just a matter of, hey, can you look at this website and give us your opinion, and something that would cost a lot of money, usually we can get for free. So we're really interested in what these guys are doing. And then I've kind of just gone through a timeline here, and one of the most recent developments is what's going on with the Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And you've heard that organization mentioned a couple of times yesterday, but it's the professional organization of all the Southeastern state wildlife agencies, and it represents 13 states. And I told you a while ago that, these bear number increases aren't just tied to Tennessee, it's all over the Southeast. And knowing that, Director Carter asked me to present this program to the directors of the Southeastern Association last spring. So we did that, and it was very well received. And to make a long story short, basically what has happened is the directors feel like there's a need for not only there to be a consistent message within Tennessee, but it needs to be consistent all across the Southeast. So we've kind of stepped back just a little bit and changed gears, and the website now is going to be a regional website, and there's going to be input from all 13 of those Southeastern states in development of that site. So right now I'm in the process of getting information input from the other states and members of the large carnivore working group, and we're going to move forward with developing this for the Southeast. And I will mention just quickly, I was looking at some other surveys, and that same group that I showed you a while ago that did our bear survey did one for Pennsylvania, about 8 years ago, maybe 5. And one of the questions they asked is, where do you go to get your information about bears? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the number was like 3 or 4% went to their state wildlife agency to get information about bears, and we need to turn that around, and because some of the websites people are getting information off of aren't giving good information regarding bears. So really excited about this program being a regional program that's going to give us the program is credible, but the best word I can come up with is it gives us more credibility because it's not only in one state, it's all across a region. So I think it's going to open up some doors of opportunity for us that we may not have if it was just based in Tennessee. The last partnership I want to mention is this one. When we first started talking, one of the things on our to-do list was develop some educational materials for teachers to use in the classroom. And we knew right away that that would be a really big bite to take and chew on for a while. But shortly after this started, we got a phone call from a guy up in the Northeast, and he said, "Hey, Dan, do you remember that program I did on the Bear Education CD-ROM program for schools?" And I said, "Yeah, I recall it." He said, "Well, we're wanting to take that curriculum and put it online and make it available to teachers online so it's a lot more accessible." And they were looking for partners to help them get it done. So we looked over the information and what the end product would be, and decided it was a good investment. And here in just about in the last 2.5 weeks, this has come out. I haven't had a lot of time to look at it, but what I have seen, I've been very impressed. There's a lot of good videos. You may not see it, but it's geared towards K through 8. And it's just information that they can use in their classroom, in their science classes. And so we're really excited about this. All teachers in the state of Tennessee, whether it be private school, public school, and I'm pretty sure we'll even be able to work it out for homeschoolers to be able to utilize this information. And one of the perks that we get is being a partner. If we need them to make changes to help it fit the state curriculum a little bit better, we'll probably be able to do that. And speaking with Don King and Pandy English, we've already sent this out to teachers that are involved in Project Wild and asked them to give us some input on the best way to get this out to the teachers across the state. Short-term goals, I've already mentioned what we're going to do with the website and making it a regional program. We really want to explore and develop this idea of these bear-wise communities and businesses. One of the things that the National Parks Conservation Association is working on is a couple pilot projects this winter. They're looking at restaurants to see if they'd be open to providing, placemats with bear-wise info and things like that. I think they're actually working with some of Commissioner Chase's, former Commissioner Chase's restaurants on that. And then we also are going to approach a handful of cabin rental businesses to try to get info inside the cabin rental, so when the tourists come in and the first thing they see is information about bears, and gives them some good information about how to avoid conflicts and what they should and should not be doing regarding bears. And I've already spoken to one rental place, and they said, anything you want us to do, we'll do it. So any kind of signs you want us to put up, brochures, whatever it is, you just tell us what it is and we'll do it. So there's a lot of information willingness in the public. PSAs, Tracy Kramer with the National Park Conservation Association told me about a week and a half ago she may have an opportunity for us to film some PSAs to be utilized on the plateau area through public television. John Gregory and I talked, and I mentioned it to the director as well, but I'd like to take that a step further and get something out there that could be used in any of those 13 states. And once again, I think that's where the credibility and the ability to do bigger things comes into play, because when you're talking about doing something in a 4 or 5 county region versus a 13 state region, well, then you get more interest in people wanting to be involved in something like that. So we're going to be exploring that idea. And then lastly, I mentioned the literature a little while ago, but I've asked the the other states to start thinking about getting us any kind of literature they may have regarding bears, and let's start pulling it together and reviewing it as a group and deciding what we want to use, what we want to tweak. And in the end, if we were to pick this and it says a fed bear is a dead bear, it'd have the Bearwise logo and website, and then each state could put their logo on there and print these things up and put them wherever they need them. So I've talked really fast, and I've skipped quite a few things, I'm sure. The first time I did this presentation for the initial user groups, it took a little over an hour, and I knew we couldn't do that today. So I hope I've done a good job explaining it. There's a lot of excitement about what potential this program has, and the hope is that it get us ahead of what some of these other states out in the Midwest and West have had to deal with over the years, and learn from their examples and not make the same mistakes they have. When we take a break here, I'm going to put a couple of things on your desk there, but this little packet's got a couple of the Bearwise stickers and a door hanger that we developed, and then a flyer that we put together really quick. And the flyer is a good example of what the MPCA can do for us. We needed something really fast for the plateau, and we put it together, and then they've looked at it and said, hey, we have a few suggestions that might make that a little bit better. So when we reprint that, we'll have something better for them. I'd be glad to take any questions you may have.
Dan, thanks for a great presentation. Living in East Tennessee, I think I can speak for Commissioner Stout and probably Commissioner Cannon. We do get phone calls concerning bears, and educating the public is going to be the most important thing that we can do to make sure that the bears are protected and continue to proliferate. I have 2 calls in the last 2 weeks about bears, and one was from a real educated person that owns some property near the Speedway where he rides horses. He called me about 10 o'clock, said he'd seen a bear, and of course my first comment was awesome. Right. I don't think he wanted to hear that, but but my comment, I said, well, is there a problem? And I said, is he in your trash, or is he getting your horse feed? Well, no, he just, people that are riding out here are kind of scared of it. And I said, what? I said, if he becomes a problem, call me back. But I said, I bet he's just moving through, and right. If you've just seen him once, I said, it seems like the first thing that people want to do when they see a bear is make sure it's extracted from the property from there. And then we had another situation out in the South Holston area that a bear was just getting into some trash at a store, and I went down when I heard that there was a depredation permit because it became a constant problem. I went down there and just drove behind the store and looked. Well, they've got metal containers. I mean, how hard would it be to put some kind of just latch on there to keep the bear from in the trash, and it would have moved on. But when you create a situation where there's feed and you're not doing anything to prevent it, then the bears are the ones that are going to suffer from it. And so I think the education program that y'all are trying to create is awesome. And even in our area where we've seen bears for years, people still freak out a little bit. So I think the program is necessary, and I appreciate the good job you're doing.
Yeah, and one of the biggest issues we deal with, and I think either one of our officers from Blount County can talk to you about this. We have ordinances in Gatlinburg, have had them for some time. The city of Gatlinburg has an ordinance, and enforceability is an issue, but it is a simple answer. Lock the dumpster and then unlock it when you want to dump it. But it's just amazing how much pushback you get from the companies that pick up the trash, because they don't want their people to have to get out right. and unlatch those dumpsters. And that is one of the biggest things other states have had to deal with. And then they do buy trash cans, and they don't necessarily function properly. And the reason they're not functioning properly is because after they get unloaded, the workers are tossing them off into the yard and breaking them. Right. And so one of the biggest, and I mentioned that, one of the biggest issues is get on the front end on cities like Johnson City and Kingsport and the Gatlinburgs, because these other cities, these bears know when trash pickup day is, and they just make the route, and they go around and they start hitting those trash cans. And if we get on the front end of it, it'll be a lot easier pill to swallow than after it's a big problem. So,
people are willing to recycle and spend a little extra money doing that. Maybe the public, if approached properly, would be willing to pay a little more on their trash cans in areas like that right. that might be willing to spend a little more. Have you been approached at all?
No, I was going to recommend to Dan that we talk after this meeting, that we set up a time for him to come to the city commission and make a presentation. I don't know if this one's really tailored to, right. but something that you could put together for just some safety, proactive approaches that people in Johnson City could take. And I think it'd be a good education, especially for our parks and recs too. So
Right.
I'd love to invite you to a city commission to make a short presentation, which is aired on TV, so that people are become more aware and educated about this. I think that's one step in the positive direction for Johnson City, but we definitely do have bears, and people are starting, as Jeff said, they become very alarmed and very protective. I don't really consider the bear to be a threat to their personal health, but that's how the public typically takes it. So
I hope the agency's take on depredation permits is to protect people's property like corn and, you know, crops and all, but when you get a situation where it's just getting in trash and, you know, becoming a little bit of a nuisance, I hope that we're kind of hesitant that we maybe come in there and really try to educate, like in this instance was a store. I hope we go in and try to educate them and say, this is what we can do. We hate to, you know, give you a permit to kill the bears. You know, I hope that we restrict that mostly to crop depredation and that sort of thing. I'm not sure what the attitude is. Can you
Just for
comment on that, John? Or
Well, just FYI, when you give a depredation permit, you can basically break it into two categories. And you mentioned the first one, corn. A corn permit, the last time I looked, was probably 30–40% chance that a bear would be taken on a permit where there's corn damage. And there's really not that many permits issued for that. It's going up a little bit. But then you can take everything else, whether it's trash, bird food, grills, chickens, whatever it may be. You can take all those other instances and group them together, and there's probably about a 5 to 7% chance that they're going to take that animal on that permit. They just don't do it. And they don't do it for two reasons. Number one, they are educated by the officers, and they say, okay, I'm going to clean that mess up. Or it may not even be a mess. It's just, I need to quit feeding my dog on the front porch. So they make that decision, and the bear moves on. Or the other option is, well, I really don't want to kill the bear, so I will clean it up, even though they may not want to. So really, they're pretty effective because it kind of puts it back on their part to be proactive and do what they need to do. Because if you just move a bear and they don't clean up or make changes, then the next bear comes along is going to do the exact same thing. So it's overall, I think it's a battle that there's always going to be people that aren't going to do what you ask them to do. They're going to be a problem, but for the most part, people are willing to make the changes they need to do.
good. Did we have a good mass crop this year? Are the bears staying in the mountains this year? Or do you
It's
know?
interesting because the mass crop, from the best reports we have, are spotty. Had a guy call me from Unicoi County and said he's not seeing anything. Other people are seeing it, but our archery harvest is only, I say only, at 36 right now. And typically when you've got a bad mast issue, you're going to be in the 60s, 70s, and even, I think it was 2009, we had 101 bears harvested on the archery season. So our archery harvest isn't indicating that there's a big shortage of mast.
Thank you.
just another question.
You talked about the minimum being 4,000 bears is what you estimate, not counting the park, correct?
I'm sorry?
You're saying that you estimate about 4,000 bears, not counting the park minimum?
Yes.
What do you think, is there any, in your mind, is there a maximum? I mean, is it that, and plus I heard some people talking the other day that they had spotted a bear north of Memphis. Is that stuff true? I mean, a bear?
Yes, sir, it's true. As far as the bear numbers, I'd say some estimates, depending on what you talk to the park and you throw the plateau in, could get approaching 6,000. The park's a little iffy because, you know, you got them in North Carolina and the park, and they're moving back and forth, and the same thing on the plateau. But, you know, 5,500, somewhere in there possibly. I said that on purpose on the map, that all of Tennessee is bear habitat. And bears will eventually start showing up again in West Tennessee. We had one, was it 2 years ago, Alan, that was in Memphis? They had one in Memphis. They have bears radio collared in northwest Mississippi, and they have regularly had those bears cross into Tennessee. You had Arkansas's packed full of bears. So Alabama is seeing bears moving from the south. There's been some bear activity in north middle Tennessee towards the eastern end of Region 2. Those bears are coming from Kentucky. You know, Kentucky's got a good bear population that's growing, and it's moving westward. So these sightings in Middle and West Tennessee are going to continue to increase, and this program is designed to impact them as well, we hope, and it'll be short, but hopefully by the time it really needs to be utilized over there, we'll have a lot of the bugs worked out of it. But they're coming to a region near you soon.
I've got a question. Is along the lines of what Commissioner Stroud asked, is there, and I thought that's where he was going, is there a tipping point in the population in the Cherokee or somewhere up here around the populated areas that the reproduction math, where you have to go into a more control mode than you do promoting the growth of the
Well, I don't think the bears are going to slow down. I mean, they've already shown that they can utilize just about anything. And, you know, that picture of 3 cubs, that used to be a pretty unique thing to see, a sow with 3 cubs, and nowadays you see them with 4 and 5. So they're doing very well. You can always increase your harvest opportunity. You know, you hope that earlier hunts sometimes will harvest more bears. The hunts in Blount and Sevier and part of Cott County, their early hunt is geared to try to harvest some of those bears that move out of the park, because that's the time of year they move out. By the time you get into their December hunt, a lot of their bears have moved back up into the park, so they're not available. So you can tweak your seasons earlier and when bears are more available. Some people talk about bag limits, but we have a 1 bear bag limit. I don't think increasing the bag limit would increase the harvest at all, because there's a lot more bear hunters than there are the number of bears being harvested. So right now, you know, obviously people talk about bear reserves. You know, that's our bread and butter as far as protecting the bear. They've been the reserves. And some states like North Carolina have even had some limited hunting in the bear reserve. So there are a lot of things out there you can do, but we still want to make sure that we're not jumping the gun. Right now, our harvest, if you just look at statistics, and it's hard to predict, but I would say we're looking right now at around a 450 bear harvest this year, which is about our 5-year average. So we're trying to look at some other things through our bear management plan to help us monitor our bears a little bit better, try to get a few more teeth, and look at percentage of older age males in the harvest and some things such as that. So there's a lot of discussion about how do you slow down the growth over there in the Cherokee National Forest. And
Dan, what about Hawkins County? Is that still something that you're looking at as far as a possible bear season here?
Yes, sir. We talked a little bit about Hawkins County last year, and we're in the process of developing our bear management plan, and there's some discussion about zones and some other things that we would like to do, but so we held off on opening any new counties up last year till we can work through this plan. So that'd definitely be on the table. And the issue, and I don't want to get into it today because, like I said, I want it to be not controversial, but when you get into Hawkins County, you got to make decisions about hunting with dogs and things like that.
Right.
And none of those decisions are easy. So.
Thank you. Director Carter, did you want to address this?
Just for a second, I wanted to take a second, brag on our folks, if you allow me that time to do that. The southeastern states, obviously you know where the southeast is, but the states that it encompasses, if you start in Texas and go up through Oklahoma and Arkansas and over the top of Missouri, across into Kentucky, then all the way over to West Virginia, down to Florida, and including Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, or as they say, Puerto Rico. But anyway, I just learned to do that the other day. But if you take all those states into account, that's a pretty big piece of real estate. I just wanted to tell you, when we met and Dan presented this program to the directors of the Southeast, and they adopted this as the program for the Southeast, abandoning individual programs they had in their own states, that's a pretty doggone big accomplishment. And so I think a lot of kudos go to everybody who was involved in developing that. But to follow that up, just while I'm bragging on our folks, our captive wildlife laws were adopted this year as the United States Department of Agriculture's national model on how captive wildlife should be handled. Our boating program, when they presented it to the Coast Guard on what we do now and for future planning, the Coast Guard used that as their national model for other states to take in. So just in saying all that, we have some really good people, and to have all that kind of stuff that's adopted as either a regional or a national model, just kind of points out, I think, the quality of our personnel. And if I can tell you what's one quick story as to why we need an education program, you know, when we have peak weekends like Labor Day and we're shorthanded because it's dove season, it's the last big boating season, it's fish, on and on, we break up. So I was working Percy Priest Lake. I was in a boat by myself and 2 other officers in boats by themselves. And I get an emergency call from the dispatcher that I needed to call this person. When I called her, I recognized the voice, and she said, "Oh, Ed, please send somebody over here. There's a bear." And this is just outside of Nashville. She said, "There's a bear. We've tracked it all the way up. It's in the corn crib out here, and we got to get somebody over. We don't know how to handle it." We debated back and forth because we don't see many bears around Nashville, but occasionally. So I asked the other 2 guys to leave the lake and go to her house. And by the time they were almost there, she called me back and she said, "I guess you can tell them to go back. It was Granddaddy." So it took me a minute to figure that one out, and I always wondered what Granddaddy looked like, but she went on to tell me that he'd partied too much the night before and got on his hands and knees, and the reason they thought it was a bear is because it kind of looks like, you know, paw prints and human hand prints look alike. And he'd crawl from his house through the corn and went to sleep in their corn crib. So when they finally found Granddaddy, I said, "We need some kind of education program." So it was a long time coming, Dan, but thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to add real quick, because I'm going to make sure I mention this, that since the beginning of this program, every time we talk about it with people within the agency or outside the agency, everybody brings something new to the table, which has got some great potential. And that includes all the officers in the field. I mean, they're the ones in Tennessee that are dealing with it on a daily basis, so you can't be effective if you're not involving them. And I'll give you a quick example. The bear officer in Gatlinburg sent me an email the other day, and he said, "Hey, Dan, got this display down here at Park Vista, and the manager's talking about trying to see if managers at other hotels in the chain are interested in doing some stuff with this." So everybody's is taking on different aspects and doing some different things, and it's got great potential. We just need some time on it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Dan, don't run off. I want to commend you. I think that was a tremendous presentation, and I think our agency should be extremely proud of what we're doing, leading on this issue. The only thing I might suggest, I noticed the logo does not have our seal. You said something about it being regional. Of course, it's a regional program, but will we eventually have our seal, have our identifying mark on there?
If it's literature that we're putting out, then we would put the seal. And I think I used I had take just a second to pull this up. I had an example here. Right here.
I mean, I'm in favor of taking credit.
Right here, you've got the Bearwise logo, and then right next to it is our agency seal.
Okay.
And the idea is that if Virginia uses this same piece of literature, then there'll be the Bearwise logo and the Virginia seal.
Great.
And their stuff. So,
Great.
And it goes back to that consistent messaging out there. And some things, if it's a lot of like posters and things that we put together, there may be seals. You know, the Southeastern Association seal may be on there along with several all the state agencies. So, and initially this program was designed as Bearwise Tennessee, and we realized real quickly that it would be a lot better received because, you know, it's hard for Smoky Mountains National Park to put Bearwise Tennessee stickers on their trash cans in North Carolina. So it just opened up more doors by dropping that.
If I see the sticker without the TWRA logo connected to it, and I'd go to Bearwise or www.bearwise.info, am I going to go then to a TWRA site?
The way we envision it is that there will be the basic information on the website that let me go to the website right here. It is. You'll have your basic information about, you know, we've talked a lot about what's the first thing you want people to see when they get to the website, and it's those things about the Bearwise basis, probably what we're going to go with. But somewhere on here, real close, maybe up in this corner or something, there will be like a map of the Southeast states and say, go to your state. So if somebody wants to go to Tennessee and get specific stuff on Tennessee, they can. And then the states have to make the decision, and Michael talked a lot about this yesterday, is it going to be embedded in our website or is it going to jump to another website? But there's a need for some state-specific things because Louisiana has a subspecies that's listed as endangered. So, you know, they're going to have some specifics. And Texas has, I believe, 3 subspecies. So there's going to be a lot of work. We're going to have a lot of conversation, but it's got great potential. Thank you.
Sure. Just state your name, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Okay.